an NBA championship ring, and 6 All-Star appearances. Do you bring him in, whether you get Durant or not, at the expense of letting go D'Angelo Russell? Russell is a 23-year-old NBA All-Star who was a reclamation project coming from Los Angeles, who ends up being the focal point of Brooklyn's offense, saved their season, led them to the playoffs, and is a homegrown star. Marks and Atkinson have preached culture, culture, culture. And are they going to give up on that culture for a chance to, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional, swing for the fences and compete for an NBA championship? It's a really tough call because when you're Sean Marks and you inherited this Nets job, you didn't go through all those years of rebuilding and cap managing and taking on bad contracts and trying to gather assets any way you can to be a mediocre team in the East. So going after Durant and Irving would give them that credibility of, hey, the Nets are ready to compete for a championship. But if they let Russell walk, they're kind of letting go of that culture they preach, and they're bringing in a guy who is not very popular in NBA locker rooms right now. And if Kevin Durant doesn't come, do you still pay Irving to be a solo act, which I don't think Brooklyn will do. I think it's both or none. And then they end up bringing back Russell. But it's such a tough call, Ben. I mean, this is another reason why I'm conflicted is I was all in on keeping Russell, bringing in Tobias Harris. But then the Nets are going to be, okay, maybe they'll get the 4 seed. Maybe they won't. If they get Russell to go and they get Irving and Durant, and in 2020 they're championship contenders, all this will be null and void. Now, the reason why I'm leaning towards Irving now is because I listened to a lot of talk radio today, and they were saying, well, if Karis LeVert didn't go down, Russell would never be the focal point of the offense, and it may have been LeVert in the All-Star game and not Russell. And Russell's really only highly effective if he's the focal point of an offense, which also gives me a little bit of trepidation with giving him a max deal. I know he's younger. I know he's going to cost about $5 million less a year, but I'm still very, very, very conflicted because both of these guys can't defend. And if Russell comes back and he doesn't replicate last season's success, then the Nets are stuck in the mud again. So that is my rant. I know anyone who listens to NBA shows, podcasts, have heard all of this, but this is just my point of view as a Nets fan. So Therapist McDonald, what do you think?
I think it's a shame the Nets can't do a sign and trade for Russell because they did wonders for his career last year, no matter how you slice it. But I have a question for you, Jason, which is, in 3 years, who will be the better NBA player in your view, Russell or Irving?
So Irving's got the accolades already. And if Russell's ceiling is what Irving is now, then Irving's the better play here. You know, he could have learned from his mistakes. This could have been a fluke. You know, he didn't like living in Boston. He didn't like his teammates. But with Brooklyn's culture, and that I think is what's drawing Irving to the Nets, is the culture and the infrastructure. Those may not be issues. He's got family here. He's from the area. He just bought a house in South Orange, according to reports. All eyes were on the Knicks, but he's apparently focused on Brooklyn. So if he can kind of get past that and say, listen, like, I'm an NBA champion. I have a shot at the Hall of Fame. If I ruin things with a third franchise, my reputation is shattered. So I do think that Irving, even though he's injury prone, is the smarter play here. Like I've been saying all show, Ben, my heart says Russell, my head says Irving. So hopefully if the Nets do wind up with Kyrie, he can put all those issues in the past and just start fresh in Brooklyn in an established, cultured environment.
Bottom line, 2021, 2022 season, who's the better player out of these two in your
You have to say Irving because, like I said before, if Russell's ceiling is what Irving is now, then Irving's the smarter signing. But if he's coming to Brooklyn alone, I want no part of
it. And we'll see. I mean, I think the Tobias Harris Irving pairing would be very underrated.
See,
and actually,
I think if it's Tobias, it's got to be Russell. You're not paying Kyrie Irving max money to bring in Tobias Harris, the second star. Now, if they sign Irving and then get Jimmy Butler, all right, I'll sign up for that. But Harris is more of a complimentary piece. He's capable of going for 20 every night. I think he'd look great next to Jared Allen, but that's only if the Nets are running it back, wanting to build off this core that made the playoffs last season, and is adding Tobias as that next piece.
Let me make my Harris Irving case, especially in comparison to the Butler case, because I think the case for the Tobias Harris and Irving pairing is that they're on similar timelines. I think they're about the same age, if I'm not mistaken. I think Harris is about 26, and I think Irving is as well. So they're kind of on the same timeline, and the hope would be, so Irving's actually 27, but he just turned 27 this year, where Tobias Harris is turning 27 this year. So they're really only a few months apart. So they're on the same kind of timeline. I think it fits more with what the Nets are doing. They want to kind of contend, but also build for the future. And it adds shooting. My concern with Jimmy Butler is that Butler is not a shooter, and that is going to be a problem for him. And then as time goes on, I really worry about the way that Butler's game is going to age. I think if you get Jimmy Butler, you have to be in championship contention the next couple years. He's going to turn 30 this year, and I don't think he's a player who you're expecting to age well into his 30s. So if you're a team like the Nets, if you get, say, Durant and Butler, sure. But I don't think Irving and Butler is enough to win the title. And I also just don't think that they're a great fit on or off the court. I don't think we've seen Irving be a guy who can play nice with others, and Butler kind of has the same reputation. And I would worry a lot about those two players' ability to fit together as teammates, where I think Harris would have the ability to kind of step back. And I think ultimately, Jason, what happens if they get Harris is that this team becomes the Irving LeVert show. All of a sudden, it's those guys who are carrying the team. So then the second star is not Harris, it's actually LeVert. And I
And
think
they have to
that suits
pay
them.
him. They have to pay him. Karis LeVert's going to command a decent extension. And you know what? I'm going to end this debate in this therapy session. I thank you. Venmo charge me for your services. Please use the grilled cheese emoji that we used when I was in Pittsburgh. What was the name of that place again? I
The
love that place.
Yad.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to end this by saying the fact that the Nets are in this position after what they've been through is a miracle in and of itself. The Nets are the talk of the NBA, this week, and it's about time. It's nice to hear, ESPN drive time programming on the radio lead off with the Nets, which never happens, or phone calls on the Nets. The fact that they're here is a miracle in and of itself. And I think no matter what happens, the Nets will be okay because they do have a star in the making in Karis LeVert. And that's the one knock against Russell, too, is he virtually disappeared in the first round against Philly. Karis LeVert was the steady force on offense. He showed that he's healthy, and I think that free agents are going to want to come and play because of Brooklyn's two current cornerstones in LeVert and Jarrett Allen. So the Nets are going to be okay. I think that they're going to look completely different next week. This time, we'll see what happens. I know you're saying Durant may take a while. I think he holds all the cards, but I think Sean Marks has a plan A all the way down to a plan Z, whether it's Irving and Durant or Russell and Harris or Butler and Irving. There's plans on plans on plans, and it's exciting. And I think a lot of Nets fans are conflicted. Like I said earlier, it's a civil war. I fully trust Sean Marks, and whatever he does, I will ultimately be okay with. Will it be sad to say goodbye to Russell? Yes, because the Nets don't have too many homegrown all-stars, but the Nets have been fighting for years. When they moved to Brooklyn, acquired all those aging superstars, this is what they work towards. This is that moment. Let's see what they do with it.
You took the words out of my mouth. I mean, ultimately, if it means getting Irving, even if it's a solo act, I think on some level they may have to just swallow hard and do it because that's the move that a championship contender makes. They go to get the guy who can be the first or second best player. So ultimately, I think you're right. I think they need to probably make the moves there, but I want to quickly touch on, we talked about Russell, and Russell and a few others were in the running for some NBA awards. Those wrapped up yesterday, so just a quick run through. Most of these were kind of preordained. Pascal Siakam wins the most improved player. Giannis, the MVP. Doncic gets Rookie of the Year. Budenholzer gets Coach of the Year. Lou Williams, Sixth Man. And Rudy Gobert, Defensive Player of the Year. Jason, what are your thoughts? Any of these jump out at you? Any surprises in here?
Well, I thought Giannis was very deserving, ditto Doncic and Bud. I'm biased, so I had a little bit of an issue with the voting for Pascal Siakam. He deserved it, and I know these votes were tallied before the playoffs began and Toronto went on a huge run to the championship, but I thought it would have been a closer race with Russell. Siakam wasn't an all-star this year. Russell was. So I thought it could have been a little closer. I'm not saying Russell should have won it over him. I just thought it would have been a closer race. And then when these awards came out, I was ticked that there were two Clippers on there. Lou Williams is fantastic, and I think he is the best sixth man in the game. But the fact that he was on the ballot with Montrezl Harrell and then a guy like Dinwiddie was left off bothered me a little bit. So I'm not bothered that Lou Will won. I'm bothered still that there were two Clippers on the ballot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought one of the closest races here were probably the Defensive Player of the Year and the MVP. it's hard to say with the defensive player of the year with any confidence who it is. It's getting harder and harder to find NBA defense as we go along. So I think that's a toughie. I thought Giannis deserved the MVP. We talked about it, but Harden was a deserving candidate as well. So I mean, I no surprises there. The one thing here I thought that was weird, Jason, is it was too late for me. I've sort of moved on from the regular season, and since these are regular season awards, it just felt sort of weird. Um, don't love the timing of these. Would like to have maybe at least like a postseason player of the year, similar to what hockey does or something, and maybe just do these awards a little earlier like they used to, so it
Like it
feels a little
used
more
to,
relevant.
yeah. Like announce the MVP and give the trophy at a game in front of fans, like when Rose got the MVP or Curry or Westbrook. It was
Yeah,
during these players getting ready for deep postseason games, the conference finals, the semifinals, the finals. Enough with the pomp and circumstance. Like it's
exactly.
ESPN. It's ESPN. And like everything's a show. It's beyond frustrating. So
Very
that's my rant.
unnecessary. But at any rate, there was one other move I just wanted to touch on because I thought it was a very underrated, under the radar move that I thought really was actually a bit better than I think maybe some people thought. It was pretty much a straight, at least from what we know, it's a straight player swap. Portland is trading Evan Turner to the Hawks for Kent Bazemore, and I've loved a lot of what Atlanta has done. But I think Portland fleeced them in this deal because I think Bazemore could be the sixth guy on this Blazers team. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked, Jason, if he starts for them at points during the season. And if he can rediscover his 3-point stroke, this move could be sneakily a move that puts Portland back on the map as a contender. And I know that for the casual NBA fan, you're probably not familiar with Kent Bazemore, but Bazemore had moments in his career where he looked like the prototypical 3 and D guy. And I think he has really, really struggled, Jason, being on teams that ask a little bit too much of him and ask him to do things. I mean, I watched a number of Hawks games. I went to a game in person. He just is not suited for the role that he's been in. He's not a playmaker. And there were so many possessions where they were asking him to play make. This is a guy who barely registers a positive assist to turnover ratio, Jason. I mean, he's just not someone who you want to be making decisions. And the Hawks pushed that on him during his time there. He was really better when he was taking less shots, and his efficiency kind of bears this out. And I think that now that he gets to return to a role, he'll really be strong. And I think you're going to see a return to what he can do where he's going to be focusing more on rebounding and defending and shooting open threes. And that's where he can be a star in his role. And it's exactly the thing that Portland was really missing was that wing player who can kind of defend multiple positions and shoot the ball. And they cycled through so many guys, Jason. They have not been able to find it. I do wonder what this will mean for Rodney Hood's future. But if they keep those guys, if they keep Seth Curry, they could have a heck of a wing rotation, Jason, in a league that has really put value on having those types of guys. So I actually really like this move for Portland. And I think he could actually be like a pretty important piece for them next year.
Yeah, I said this during the draft recap. I think Portland's had a hell of a start to the offseason given all the player movement, but just bringing in two key guys in the Nasir Little, high upside pick, and then bringing in Kent Bazemore, and more importantly, getting Evan Turner's contract off the books. Now, I read an article that both Bazemore and Turner were beneficiaries of the cap boom in 2016. It saw Timofey Mozgov get 60 mil.
Yeah.
But the fact that both these guys signed 4-year, $70 million deals, I think it's a fair trade. Turner will get a chance to play off the bench for the Hawks. Bazemore goes to Portland. I wonder what this means for friend and co-host of their podcast, Vince Carter. The Hawks have 14 guaranteed contracts, and they need another big guy. So there may not be a spot for Vince, who wants to play one more year. So it'll be interesting to see if he does end up on a team chasing a championship. Does he follow Kent to Portland? I think that's something to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot to digest, and next week we will be able to start talking about what's going on. I expect we're going to have some interesting free agency chatter between now and then. So lots to talk about come next week. But I think for now, Jason, this might be our record longest podcast, and it's been a joy. We've had some great stuff to discuss. And now it's time for the off season. I mean,